Hello, Smart Money Tree podcast listeners. Welcome to this week's show. My name's Kirk Chisholm, and I'll be your host. So today I'm joined with Hillary Seiler. How you doing, Hillary?
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, good to have you in the show here. For those of you who don't know Hillary, tell us a little bit about your background before we begin.
Yeah, I'm a financial education coach, have been for the last decade, and my specialty is working with pro athletic organizations, universities, and recently, in the last, I'd say 5 years, we started working with corporate America, helping small to mid-cap businesses improve their employees' financial wellness.
Nice, nice. So how'd you get started in this space?
It wasn't something I ever imagined. If you would have asked the 20-year-old me what I would be doing at 38 years old today, I would not have said teaching anybody about money. I would have said I'm probably going to work in the financial services in some capacity, but I don't know what it is. And it all happened because of some football players at Oregon State University where I went to school. I had a pretty easy, honestly, most of us can't say this, and I'm glad I can. I had a really easy upbringing, Kirk. When I say that, money was easy, life was pretty easy. And when I hit 19, the world decided that it wasn't going to be easy for me anymore. And I went from having my college education paid for because my parents did all the right things for me to my mom falling sick. And the introduction to my sophomore year was me taking out 30 grand in student loans and getting a full-time job because her medical bills were so severe that my college fund was depleted. And so I quickly learned the value of a dollar and started looking at money a little bit differently. And as I was going through that illness journey with her, which lasted about 7 years before she passed, the guys that I was really good friends with in our finance program at Oregon State happened to be football players. And we happened to be next door neighbors. So we kind of went through this 3 year thing together, sophomore to senior year. And by my junior year, they kind of figured that things weren't going so well. They knew my parents. My parents would try to come to football games. Very small community at Oregon State. And so everybody knew everybody. And the guys helped me out. They actually kept my fridge pretty full for about 2 full years because they knew I didn't have enough money. Sometimes I had to choose between rent and food, or I'd have to choose between walking to work or driving to work. There's just a lot of different things that were going on in my financial life, and they helped me out a ton. So when they were drafted to the NFL, fast forward now, I was helping them make decisions like, how do I buy a car? Should I invest in real estate? Who do I trust with my money? How do I get a credit card? Should I use a debit card? How many bank accounts should I have? And all of these questions were flying at me at 22 while I was working in banking. I was just trying to figure it all out myself, started helping them. A couple NFL teams got word of it, and a few years later, they asked me to design a program, and here we are.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I've always been amazed. Growing up, I played sports, played hockey and baseball, and a bunch of my friends actually went on to play in the NHL and well, they were minor league baseball. I think I might have played a game or two, but yeah, they end up pretty much going pro, and it's amazing to me as to how little financial education there is, and
Yeah.
how many people with let's just say more experience that can take advantage of them at that level, including their friends and their group, all their
Yeah.
new friends that are now friends because they've got money, and it's amazing to me. And what has happened? I know a little of this, but like, what's the evolution of what's happened? Because I know that it used to be a free for all, and they put some barriers in place to make sure that these players don't end up broke, even though that still happens, but they don't end up as broke as before.
Yeah, so I think it was 08, 09, the ESPN 30 for 30 broke came out, and they said 78% of NBAers and NFLers are going to go broke within 3 to 5 years of leaving the league. I don't know where they got that stat. I don't know how accurate that stat actually is. But because of things like that coming out and watching a lot of guys that did go bankrupt through whether it was divorce or just really bad financial mistakes, the collective bargaining agreement through the NFL, which is voted on by the players and the owners, is reassessed every 10 years. And in that collective bargaining agreement for the NFL specifically, I'll speak to that. NBA has something similar, but NFL is probably the biggest forerunner in the space for financial literacy. They mandate that every rookie has at least 4 financial education sessions in their rookie season. They have to do it. And then the second thing that they have to do for financial education is when they hit their second and third year in the league, they're required to sit through 2 more sessions minimum. And each of those sessions is supposed to be about a different financial topic that addresses the things you and I are talking about: lifestyle, spending, building a financial team. How do you trust the people around you? What types of investments are actually good ones and which ones are maybe things you should stay away from. All of those things are presented to them between their like their freshman year, their rookie year, and their second and third year in the league. After that, the CBA mandates that they have to have professional development annually. Now, that isn't always finance. Sometimes that's someone coming in and talking about mental toughness. That could be someone coming in and teaching them a skill, a professional development skill, storytelling, speaking, franchising, you name it. There's a million things they do for professional development. But that was put into place. Those bumpers were put into place because we saw the world kind of go when these guys started getting paid more. And up until I don't know, was it 6, 7 years ago? Most rookies in the NFL didn't make more than $400,000 a year. People thought they were millionaires right out of the gate. Only the first round draft picks are. Everybody else's salary is a rookie minimum. Second rounders make a good living, but they're by no means millionaires unless they make it to the end of their 4 year contract. Third, fourth, fifth rounders, they'll make a nice chunk, and they could, if they invest it properly, they could probably get away with maybe not working for a couple years, but it's by no means generational wealth. So there's a lot of misconceptions around the NFL and around how much they actually make versus the reality of what they make.
Yeah, I think it's actually an interesting context because I know I wrote a white paper on this about 10 years ago because I was interested when that maybe it was more than 10 years. It was the th broken 30. But they
Mhm.
basically came out and said I thought it was whatever 78, 87% of
Yeah,
the athletes within 2 years are broken and divorced and or
and divorced,
divorced.
and or
Um,
divorced. Yeah,
yeah, and that makes sense because if you're getting divorced, you're probably going to be broke. But you know, it seemed the way that it was phrased was more like this is, this is within 2 years. They're just still living their lifestyle, even though they're not making the income. And what I
yep.
found interesting was that stat actually is true with lottery winners, with people who inherit money,
Mhm.
anybody who has a large lump of money thrown upon them. That stat holds true. It's not just
Yep,
athletes.
100%.
And so, I started to research and I was realizing like it's a human condition, right? It's not just athletes, even though if you give an 18-year-old kid $20 million, he's you know, he's gonna have 20 houses and like 50 friends and he's gonna be broke in a year. But
Things might
um
happen. Yeah.
yeah, but then there's some examples of some players like Magic Johnson who've gone on to become. I think he's worth like $500 million or something because
Yeah.
he's taken his position, and I don't know that they made as much money back then, but like he's taken his position as an athlete and as a leader and developed that into other things and became wealthy. So, what is the difference between somebody like him and every other player?
Yeah, it's the mindset. We always talk about this. I work with a couple of groups. The one that comes to mind right out of the gates is Pro Athlete Community. And Pro Athlete Community helps players across any sport. So NHL, MLB, NBA, NFL, MLS. We actually had motocross guys there. We've had pro golfers. And basically, what this group has dedicated their mission in life to, based on what you just said, and you're so spot on, it's crazy, is you come into all of this money, you establish a lifestyle, and then the money stops, and you do not know how to flip or you do not know how to change the way that you're moving with money in order to make it successful for you. And a lot of those guys are not introduced to concepts like investing, real estate, venture capital, private equity, franchising, owning a business. Typically, they're not seeing that because they're 22 to 25. They're not being exposed to it fast enough to learn how to use money the right way. Whereas the NBA players that you see do really well, and you'll probably notice that the stats of the NBA players with the or excuse me, the athletes with higher net worth, most of them are NBA players because their careers are longer, significantly longer. They might not retire until they're 34, 35, 36, and they've lived and made a lot of mistakes and they've done all the things. Whereas NFLers, 3.3 years is their career span for the average NFL player. So in that 3 year window, 22 to 25, not only do they have to manage money effectively, not get into this one click buy mentality, the Instagram and TikTok shop, and all of the things that lifestyle throws at them, but they also have a much smaller pot to work from and they have to turn that into something. And if they don't, they end up on that stat divorced, broke, all of the things. So I think with Magic Johnson, guys like him, one, he had a longer career. So that gave him some runway. But two, he was exposed to things similar to Jordan, similar to LeBron. That's a different locker room. They're exposed to a different set of business acumen just being in the NBA. The NFL's now changing their model to that. So companies like the pro athlete community are introducing these things while these guys are playing so that they can start creating those investment pools for themselves. They can start learning about the places they can put their money to make it work. Even if it's not $1 million, you can still invest with 10 grand. You can invest with 20. You can invest with 100,000. Doesn't make it, just because the pot isn't $1 million doesn't mean you can't do it. And so the concept a lot of these young men grow up with is if you don't have $1 million, you can't do anything. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And I'm thinking, in what world? Most Americans never see $1 million. Hold on a minute. You made $250,000 in the last 18 weeks. We could do something with that. So a lot of it is mindset, a lot of it lack of education, and then a portion of it is exposure. What are you being exposed to versus not? And as you know, there's no financial literacy taught in schools. It's starting to happen slowly, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be so people know what avenues they can explore. So I think those all compound the problem, and that's why we don't see more Magic Johnsons, we don't see more LeBron Jameses. The exposure isn't there, the education isn't there.
Yeah, I think it's hard, because the problem is there's so many people, like they have all this money and there's so many people who want it.
Yeah.
And, you hear these stories, like I've heard Barry Bond's name come out a lot of times of he's always suing somebody who it was a bad investment. And I was like, well, there's a guy I don't want to work with. Like it goes down 5% and he wants to sue you. But then there's most people who, oh yeah, I got this hotel for you. I got this restaurant. Restaurants are my favorite because those are just complete
The disaster.
money pits. But hey, you put your name on this restaurant, it'll be great. And um you got the Tom Brady thing with the FTX that went belly up. Like you get all this stuff, and I'm sure Tom didn't put any money up. I'm sure that was just like, hey, we'll give you some free stuff if you put your
That's
name
name,
on it.
image, and likeness at its finest.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of these players, they want their money, right? Like, oh, you can invest in this project and it'll be great, and then the project goes belly up or people run away with it,
Yeah.
and I have a lot of friends who went pro, and a buddy of mine, he's in the same industry I am, and he's like, oh, why don't you work with athletes? I'm like, I don't want to deal with it because every day they're getting pitched something new. They're even if they like you and their best friend, they're getting pitched something new. What about this? What about this? I'm like, oh, do I have to tell you no every day? Like, because that's what it's like. So
Yeah.
how does somebody, I mean, it takes a lot, right? I mean, I'm getting pitched every day by investment sponsors. Oh, put this to your
Mhm.
clients. And I don't even look at half of it. Like, how do you create that thick skin so you could just
Mhm.
ignore all of the quote unquote opportunities that are thrown at you every single day. And they all seem wonderful because they're showing you all the glitz and it's not necessarily what's under the hood because you don't know how to assess what's under the hood. So how do people deal with that?
Yeah. So assessing the business deal, right? Can you actually assess it and say this is good or bad? Most of the guys don't know how to do that. One, they have absolutely no idea how a business is run, let alone how to read projections and a forecast. So, what I typically tell them, and what most of the financial coaches that work within any of the professional leagues sit them down and teach them is, are you investing because your buddy came to you and wanted to ask you for money? One. So what's the relationship? Or is this someone who's coming to you with a proposition that is a person in finance you trust? Or, is it a friend? Is it a family member? Where's this person coming from? And what are they bringing you? And then once you know what the relationship is this really a business deal or is this somebody just trying to get money? Then you can say, all right, I need a full business plan. And when I say full business plan, they know what that looks like. They know that you need to have a full mission statement, a full target market. They know they need to have budget projections for 3 years. They need to be able to see the product and the service being sold. They want a full SWOT analysis. So we teach them the key components of a business plan to look for. And if someone can't even provide them with a business plan, which let me tell you, Kirk, I cannot tell you how many times I say, "Did you ask for a business plan?" And they're like, "Oh no, let me go text them real quick." And they'll text whoever's got this brilliant business. Well, I don't have one of those yet, but it's going to be fine. I said, "Well, then just tell them that you'd be interested in pursuing it once they send you a business plan." Kills 98% of the problems. Now, in the event we do get a deck, in the event we do get a business plan, then I have them go through their checklist. Does it have everything a business plan should have in it? And then once you've read through it, does it make financial sense to you? And then they normally come back and say, it doesn't make financial sense to me. Or I don't feel comfortable doing this. I don't like the management team, or I'm not really going to make what they told me I was going to. Cool, kill the deal. In the event that it gets past the player just looking at it and going, I do or don't love this, then we take it to the financial advisor and the CPA and the estate attorney and say, in their plan, in their actual plan, does this make sense? And does it work because you're taking a portion of their portfolio and applying it over here? And so it comes down to the financial advisor or advisors or the family officer, whoever this guy is working with, whether he's a young guy who just has, a small financial advisor, no big CPA firm or anything behind him, going to that financial professional and saying, analyze this for me. Most of my guys, I can't say all because I've seen guys make bad, poor choices because we all have
We
things
all
in our
have.
head that
Yeah.
emotionally trigger money.
Yeah. Everyone does
But
this.
yeah, we all make mistakes, but most of my guys will come and say, "Hey, can you look at this?" And if I can't find anything wrong with it, then I'll say, "You look it over, do your checklist, and go to your financial advisor." I've probably in the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years of being with the NFL, I've seen over 700 business plans, and I've only seen guys invest in two of them. So for perspective, and that's the 700 I have seen. That is not the ones that they've taken straight to their advisors. That's not the pitches that they've received for. I even had a guy who had a hotel. Someone's like, I want to put you on this hotel. And I looked at the numbers. I was like, the math does not math. Look at these things. Pointed it out on a PDF, marked it up, sent it back to him. 7 minutes of my time saved him $3 million,
Yeah.
right?
Hotels are in the category of restaurants.
Yes, they are.
Like,
As our record companies, we're not doing that either.
record companies. Yeah. You know what
Car
I found?
washes are hit or miss. I get a little nervous when I see car wash.
Yeah, it's interesting. Growing up, there was a insurance company locally, and there was a guy I didn't know him, but my dad knew him, and he was, I guess, a famous athlete, a college athlete at BC or something. Anyway, he was in the community. Everybody knew him. He was never there. He'd just go out and just meet people, and people wanted to see him. And it's like a Doug Flutie type, like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like, and just want to meet you and take a picture. Yeah, I'll do my insurance with you. Hey, I'm working with this guy. And I feel like that's really where they should be investing. Like
Yeah.
they should be doing more of that because the rest of it, you don't need to. We do a
You don't
lot of
need to go
alternatives.
crazy to make money. You can
Yeah.
actually stick to the basics and make a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, we do alternatives. And I could tell you, you don't need to do alternatives. You can just put it in the
Mhm.
index or put some, put it in there where somebody's not going to steal it. Right. Like
Yeah.
if you're not wise enough, you should just put it somewhere somebody's not going to steal it. Like, and
Yep.
then you can decide if you want to take 5% a year and put it in here or put it in there. And that way, if you take 5% and put it in Bitcoin, it goes to zero. It's only
It's only
5%.
5%.
Right. Right.
We
You
always
don't put
tell them have a
50%.
mix. As an educator, I can never advise, right? I can never say, oh,
Right.
put your money here. But I always tell my guys, and my whole team does this. And I think the NFL as a whole kind of knows this now. All of our players know this. There's three places guys invest money at the league level, at the NFL and NBA level, both. They're either buying businesses, solid businesses, like the not sexy businesses. They're buying the HVAC company that's making $2 million a year with a run rate of 500,000, right? They're buying non-sexy businesses that cash flow that they don't have to be present for. They can be a silent owner. And then they're buying real estate. That's bucket number two. And then they're throwing stuff into the S&P 500 and letting it rip and roar because they know that 20 years down the line, the chance of that thing returning 10% a year for the next 20 years is pretty solid. Like it might be 8%, but it's still no one's taking it. They can see it. They have complete control over it. And that's what they're doing. Now, that is at the advice of their financial advisors, their real estate brokers, their business agents, whoever is around them. But those are the pots I see them going for the most. I don't see a lot of guys, unless they have, we call it FU money. We actually use a different term, but I'm going to keep it clean. We call it FU money. If they have FU money, they can take the FU money and go play in venture capital and startup tech firms and all that good stuff. Go play, have fun, take a little portion and go see if you can make that 10x. But until you have FU money, why gamble? Why not put it into something you understand that you know is going to return something to you, even though there is risk involved, and make the pot grow so that you're not wasting money, losing money, having money stolen from you, or going, oh, I don't really know what I'm invested in. And so those are the kinds of just basics we get people into. And once they get comfortable, and this goes for anyone, any American I've ever worked with, any employee I've ever worked with, any pro athlete, of course, but college students as well. It's like, what do you actually know and understand? Let's start there. And then go learn something else and you can invest in that. So it's that knowledge game again. It's just learning what you can do and how you can do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, athletes actually, and I did this 10 years ago, and if you take the average salary of an athlete during their tenure and you compare it to the average worker, right, in their tenure, they actually make the same amount of money. Like it's really close to the same amount. The difference is the athlete makes it all up front. So they make a
Yes,
mistake, they're toast. Whereas
it's gone.
the everyday worker, make a mistake, make a mistake, make a mistake. Well, you can make up for it, right? But
Yeah.
athlete, like then, so what do? Because I've heard a lot of stories like athletes, their career's over, and then they're working at Home Depot. Nothing against Home
Mhm.
Depot, but like you could get probably a better paying job than that as an athlete. So like what do you recommend athletes do after they retire? Like, what would be a good game plan for them to seek the phase two of their life?
I always like to start with where do they see themselves in 5 years financially? Because that's going to give me a pinpoint of whether or not they think they're working for a company or for themselves. And that then puts them into two different trajectories. Because if they tell me I see myself working in insurance sales or medical sales, or I see myself working as a manager somewhere, or I could see myself working at a manufacturing firm. I just had a guy who got hired at a manufacturing firm here in the US, which was awesome, as a mid-level manager, and he's going to work his way up. I have to figure out as their financial coach what they're actually interested in and how they see their future because there are a good chunk of NFL players that are entrepreneurs by trade. They're very good at it. But there's also a very large chunk of them that have, for the last 18 years, have been executing a blueprint that they've been given, and they're fantastically coachable. And I think that the thing we're missing in middle management America right now is coachable people who have leadership skills, who can develop further leadership skills to move up and help people develop. And that's what these guys are super, super good at. And it took me a while to realize that. And as soon as I started realizing it, and they don't want to be responsible for a company with 50 employees, they'd rather go to work every day and develop other people. I started realizing we have two paths. And so when a guy retires, they're either going to go the entrepreneur real estate path, or they're going to go the corporate America or small business, mid cap business path. And depending on what they choose, then we're having different conversations. And there are support groups from the NFL and from the NBA that help both of those groups navigate those paths. But I will tell you, probably 80% of NFL players want to go into the workforce because they're used to executing a game plan every single day and they're very, very good at it. If you give them a blueprint, they could literally become a CEO, no problem. They just have to learn all of the steps to getting there. And if you give them the blueprint to do it, they're fantastic managers and leaders. So I would say it's a twofold conversation, and I have to figure out what they're most interested in. And then we get those groups to rally around them, and the support system is huge to help them try to develop that because we know that there is a massive lifestyle issue and change that comes with losing your identity, losing your sense of self and purpose. And a lot of these guys just feel like life's over when the game's over because for 18 years they've been told that's all they're good at. This is your skill, this is what you do. Now that's gone, and they're all retired out without really their consent. Very few NFL players or NBA players you'll meet, and they'll say, yeah, I chose to retire. It's not how that works. So then they're forced into an identity crisis, which then leads to the click and ship and the Amazon shopping sprees and the lifestyle changes. So from a career perspective, it really depends on the guy. I don't think people realize just how good these guys are and how many of them go into the workforce and they're great leaders because it's what they know how to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a study done a while ago that talked about athletes. It was mostly Olympic athletes, but they talked
Hmm.
about people who won the silver and people won the gold, and they talked about other athletes when they retire. And the consensus was is that a lot of them, like the silver medalists, like when they're always hunting for the gold, but the
Yeah.
people get the gold, like many times they get depressed because
Yes.
they've done it. They're like, what do I do now? Who am I? I won the gold. What do I do next? Get another one? Same thing with professional athletes. Like when they're done, like they get depressed because who am I?
Think
So
about
how do you?
military members. Think about military members too.
Yeah,
You retire out of the military and you've been for 4 years or 20 years, you go through the same mental shift that a pro athlete at any caliber, Olympic, our current pros, and even now our college students with NIL, they're starting to feel that shift as well. You lose your sense of purpose. And when that happens, what's the first thing to go? Your finances. and your relationships because you're depressed. It's an interesting dynamic that has to be worked on from multiple angles.
So one question I've always been curious about, and I'm on two sides in this, so I figured I'd ask.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think with professional athletes? I know there was a trend a while ago where they were trying to borderline force them to put money away into like a pension or annuity or something, so that if they retired, they would have a bare minimum amount of money because a lot of these players at the time, like they weren't really employable because they didn't have like the coaching you guys have now, but it was like Wild West. So, do you think that there should be a bare minimum standard for players so that when they leave, it's kind of like Social Security in a sense, where
Yeah.
you're just like there's a bare minimum no matter what. So, because they've got from 25 till 65 is a long time.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Because I know there's this like, hey, they should be responsible for themselves versus we need to support them. Like, where do you fall on that?
Oh, I'm so split down the middle on this, Kirk. I want them to walk away with a nice retirement account or something to fall back on, but forcing them to do it, whew, that's impeding on their ability to make free will choices with their money. So it's really hard for me to say they have to do it. What I will say is that I like that the NFL does, and I know the NBA does as well. They do some serious matching with their 401k programs, and it really incentivizes the guys to contribute, which to me allows for a bit of a buffer when they get to the point where they can access it. But there's a catch.
Right.
The CBA limits them. They cannot touch it. They can't even roll it over until they're 45. So we got 20 years before they're even going to see that money. So if they do contribute, they choose to contribute to their 401ks and get their match and all of the things that come along with being a benefit to pro athletes. They can't touch it till they're 45. So that piece of it, I can appreciate because it does protect them in certain capacities. And they do get a pension once they've hit a certain number of vested seasons. So again, this is like the back end, really boring stuff on the NFL that we have to know. But they do have that if they have enough accredited seasons, which is three. Once they have 3 seasons, they are vested into the pension. But outside of that, league doesn't require anything. They get paid just like you and I would on a W-2. We work for a company, we get our salary, we can or cannot contribute. It's up to us, and off we go. I would love to say, yeah, make them put 10% in an emergency fund and don't let them touch it for 3 years. Like, don't let them touch it. But to cut the free will out of these guys and allow them to go make the money for the guys that are doing it right, I could never say yes to that. So that's why I say I'm 50-50. Half of me is like, yeah, do it. And the other half is like, free will. So,
But how do you, I mean, free will, I mean, I think I generally side on that, but of course you had a lot of
yeah,
knuckleheads in pro sports and,
sure do.
so, those people are going to make mistakes
Hmm.
because they're headstrong and there's a lot of big egos and I know better and all that. I get it.
Yeah.
When you're 18 years old, you're on top of the world.
You're
Um,
invincible.
yeah. So how do you, let's say you go with the free will approach. How do you, or how is the league right now supporting this, or so that they beyond the education? Because education, they'll just sit in a room and be like, yeah, yeah, I know what this is all about. So how do
Mhm.
you reinforce that with the players?
The savings piece or the not making mistakes piece.
I mean, you can give more money, but it's just money because they'll just
Yeah.
spend it. So, what other things could be done or are being done to help reinforce that structure so they're not just out in the cold when they're retired because they think they're never going to retire, they're going to play forever.
Oh, for sure. So when they do hit the whole I'm no longer playing moment, and even before that, the NFL is split into two components. There's the NFLPA, which is the Players Association, and then there's the NFL League Office, and they are two separate entities in their entirety. And both of those entities support active and retired players. So within the NFL League Office, so to help these guys kind of promote and reinforce everything that we're teaching them in a classroom, they do externships, internships, partnership collaborations, and they do all that in the off season to help the guys A, save money, not overspend, and B, reinforce what we've already taught them. So the NFL and the PA are both offering those types of things. Now that's while they're active. Once they're retired, this is amazing timing, crazy timing. The pro athlete community, it's called PAC. They are kind of the forerunner for retired professional athletes, not just NFLers. And they help these guys retire out and not lose the bag, so to speak. They don't lose the money. The idea is that pro athlete community gives them all the tools and resources to reinforce the what's your emergency fund look like? What kind of investments are you in? Let's vet your financial team. And they just closed their series funding yesterday. So it's expanding because they've already helped over 1,000 professional athletes, and the goal is to hit another 2,000 in the next year. The athletes that are going through that, on average, have statistics that show they're not losing money. They're making good investment choices. They're actually growing their pot. They're not getting divorced. Now, there's not a ton of data that we're publicly allowed to share, and I don't even have those numbers, but I'm visually seeing it. And then there's other companies that are doing similar things to pro athlete community to support the initiatives that happen while they're in the league to reinforce and then continue to drive home the hey, let's manage the lifestyle and not make big, huge mistakes. But even within the league, we can only reinforce so much before the guys make the choices that they make. And usually I get a phone call. There's a phone call usually when someone messes up. Hey, Hill, might have made a bad choice. How do we fix this? And sometimes there's not a fix. There are times where I've had guys lose $40,000 and they got scammed and they really genuinely thought that they were working with a certified financial professional because they didn't take the time to vet the person. So some of those mistakes they almost have to make because if they don't make them, they're not going to be listening to us when we come back and give them more information. So it's that ugly balance. I'm with you. I wish I could say just take 50% of their income and don't let them touch it. But the other part of me says there's guys that they're gonna mess it up, and then there's a good chunk of them that are so afraid of being the broke 30 for 30 that they're now paying attention. And NIL has changed. The last 3 years has been very different in the NFL and the NBA. Very different. Before NIL, we had a lot more guys going broke. Now with NIL, the landscape has changed 100%.
So let's talk a little bit about NIL because I know that's a recent thing, and I'm not 100% up to speed with it. So
Yeah.
let's talk about it. What is it? How does it work? And what is it doing to sports?
So what it is name, image, and likeness. It's basically college athletes as of 2021, this passed in 2021, they can now be paid on their name, image, and likeness playing college sports. So they can get a portion of proceeds from jersey sales. They can get revenue from the collective, from whatever school's collective is paying them. They can take marketing money from people that want them to come do an ad. Basically, they can now capitalize on I'm the quarterback for a top 5 university, and the top 5 university wants to keep me. Their donors and sponsors can pay to keep me here because they're paying me on my name, image, and likeness, which is bringing the school money, which is getting us championships, which now I get to get paid on. It used to be that the donors would pay the school and all the money would funnel back into the school, and the student athletes that were providing the revenue weren't getting a cut. Now they're getting a cut. That was 2021 till 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, the NIL House settlement went through, and the NCAA was sued for $2.8 billion on student athletes that played between 2016 and 2024. So the settlement basically said if you played between the years of 2016 and 2024, any college sport at any university, you are entitled to a portion of this $2.8 billion settlement because you could have earned money on your name, image, and likeness playing for those universities. And so college students from 2016 to 2024 filed their claims, and this has been months and months and months in the works. And when the House settlement finally went through, the NCAA has to pay, I believe, 1.6 billion of it, and universities have to pay the remainder. And that's going to be paid out over a specific period of time to each of the athletes that actually submitted their request saying I could have capitalized on this to the NCAA. So now what's happening, since that passed, that was phase 1 of 2 for the new House ruling. The second phase, and this is where college sports is changing, I don't know if I'd say for the better, but it's going to be different. I don't know if it's worse or better or kind of somewhere in the middle. But now every school's basically going to have a salary cap, $20.5 million a year that they can spend on their athletes to keep them at their school and keep their school winning. And it's called revenue share. It's not actually called a salary cap, it's called revenue share. So it's based on the revenues the school brings in. And now the schools can pay the athletes directly to be there. And there's a percentage per school per program. They have not set specific guidelines on who can get paid what, but as of right now, everyone's kind of operating on 75% of revenue goes to football, 10% goes to basketball, men and women, and then the remaining percentages go to the other sports. And so we are now seeing general managers getting hired for NIL collectives, which is the people that oversee NIL for the universities, and they'll be managing a $20.5 million salary cap or rev share. I'm going to call it a salary cap because as football fans and MLB fans and NHL fans, you know you have a salary cap. Your team has a threshold that they can't go over to recruit the players or to pay the players to be there or to sign a free agent. This is the same concept. It's just being implemented in college sports. So we saw name, image, and likeness get the players paid. And now we're seeing it turn into a revenue generating business for both the players and the colleges. It's always been revenue generating for the colleges. Now colleges are paying players. So it's a complete and utter shift. When I learned this was happening, I was like, wow, this is going to change the landscape of college sports.
Yeah, yeah, it sure has. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I like it or not. I'm on the fence. Like, I like the fact they're getting paid.
I do too.
I, I recall back to a great, and I hate to get to this place, but like South Park did a great skit on this on the McCartman being, being
I remember this one.
it was so funny. It was brilliant, but it was all about this. He's like, "Oh, you got these athletes."
Uh-huh. I
Anyway,
love me some South Park. They're so good.
it was so brilliant. It was brilliantly done. But anyway, so I don't know where I fall on this because I think it's going to ruin the sports. But I mean, the 25 million salary cap. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean,
20, can you believe $20.5 million per school per year?
and that's just a drop in the bucket. And they're probably still going to skirt the edges anyway, like they have been. I mean, I I don't know. I don't know. I think money is ruining sports, frankly, and I hate to say that because that's why people want to go pros and make lots of money. But I
Yeah.
feel like in some ways it's kind of ruining it, and I think the players should get paid. I want to be clear,
Yeah.
but I think the college is I don't know. It's a different. It's a business. It truly is a business now.
Yes.
It's not about just playing the game. It's a business,
It
and
used to be you were a student and an athlete second, and now you're an athlete who happens to be a student at a school. So
yeah,
the business model of universities, well, it's going to bring more funding for a lot of other things and a lot of expansion and cancer research and nuclear research and all the things that schools need money for. I think it's going to drive that. I also think it shifts a little bit how sports are played.
yeah,
And I think we're going to just see dominating conferences more so than we have seen before. We have our SEC, right? We have our top 10 schools. I genuinely think there's going to be maybe a top 15 schools, and then everybody else isn't going to be able to compete. Not because, I mean, the salary cap does prohibit, but not all schools can reach a 20.5 million to pay students. That's your cap. Doesn't mean you have to hit it. So you look at a D2 school or a D1 school that's maybe not as heavily funded, they may not reach a salary cap or a revenue share cap. I'm sure someone will yell at me for not using revenue share as the word. I'm calling it a salary cap just for the record,
it pretty
because it's
much is.
easier for me to use. But
This pretty much is.
it is. But as an NFL money coach, like in my mind, everything goes to the salary cap. So when they said 20.5 million rev share, I said, oh, that's your salary cap. Okay, great. Registered, understood. But yes, I think it's going to change college sports. I think it is going to drive more revenue. I love that the players are getting paid, but here's the big kicker that we're seeing for the last 3 years that nobody's talking about, and it's driving me crazy because I'm trying to bring awareness to it. The last 3 years, I've had a lot of players come into the NFL. I've had a lot of players not make it to the NFL, and the ones that have, guess what they're coming in with? IRS tax debt because they didn't know they had to file taxes on their NIL money while they were in college. So I have been actively working and all praise to LSU. LSU hired me in 2022. I've been working with them since. Every single one of my LSU students has filed their taxes. All 500 plus of them have filed their taxes for the last 4 years because God forbid they're going to get out of college and owe the IRS 10, 20, 100, $200,000 in back taxes. Well, that's not happening. But not all schools have budgets for financial literacy, and not all schools are implementing it. LSU was really a forerunner in building a full program for this. I've got guys coming in with six-figure IRS debt to the NFL, and they're waiting for the NFL check to clear because they have spent all of their NIL money. So now we're facing this. They've made a lot of mistakes in NIL, which means they're going to treat their NFL money better. But now we're backtracking. We're not actually getting ahead because we have to go fix the mistakes we made with NIL money because there was no education to back up the paychecks that were coming.
There's no withholding. They don't force withholding with any of these players.
You're going to love this, Kirk. They're self-employed. This is name, image, and likeness.
Oh
They are a
yeah.
1099. Nothing's withheld.
Oh
Not a
man.
darn, and these guys don't know how it works because they
Yeah.
have never been taught the difference between being an employee or a 1099 contractor. Most of them have never had a job. They've played football or they've played basketball or they've played volleyball or softball. When you're an athlete, it's rare to find an athlete who's actually worked a W-2 job. Maybe they had one in high school and they sort of kind of figured it out, but 9 times out of 10, they've never had employment. So to just hand them a $10,000 check for whatever they did, they just assume that that's their money because mom and dad don't really know how this works. Most parents don't own businesses. They don't know what a 1099 versus a W-2 is. They hope they file their tax returns and don't go to jail. I can't tell you how many times I've heard parents say, I really just hope I filed this properly with H&R Block. I really don't want to go to jail. I'm like, you're not going to go to jail. If you filed incorrectly, they'll audit you and they'll tell you what you messed up and you just fix it. But there's this fear around, I just don't know what I'm doing. And so then they just take the money. They don't ask questions because they think it's theirs. And then we end up with these situations where we're having to fix some things that could have been avoided. And I believe more schools are bringing it in now. I've seen a lot of the higher echelon, higher revenue schools bringing in programming. Um, but being with the NFL and seeing guys from all over the country hit my locker rooms as rookies, I have 5 or 6 per locker room that I'm dealing with on an annual basis that haven't filed their taxes. Doesn't mean they owe any money, they just haven't filed them. And then there are guys that have massive tax debt that we're trying to sort through. And it's not on the NFL team to do it. It's not their job. It's I mean they're hiring these guys as employees, so they're going from 1099 in college to now they're an employee of whatever team they play for. So now their pay structure is also changing.
But I would think, and I agree, it's not their responsibility to deal with the taxes, but I would think if you have a employee or an independent contractor that is only working for one employer,
Hmm.
they're which kind of gets into borderline stuff because part of being an independent contractor is you have the ability to work with more than one. We don't want to go down that road.
Oh, they
Um,
all are. They're none of these guys and gals are working with just one. They've got sponsorship deals from 8 or 9 companies. They might do a photo
oh,
shoot
okay.
for a law firm. It's not coming from the university because universities couldn't pay up until 3 weeks ago. So it was coming from third party partnerships. And it could be a $500 deal with Foot Locker. It could have been a $1,000 deal with a law office. It could have been a $2,500 Wingstop sponsorship. And it's coming in from all of these different places. And then they have to account for it.
So how does so walk me through this. You got 25.5 million cap, and you got all these players who can now get paid. How are they keeping track of that? Because if you got Foot Locker, if you're hitting the 25 and a half, and then Foot Locker comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm going to give you $1 million," I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take that." Like, what is stopping players from just continuing to take more money?
Oh, they absolutely can. It just now has to go through the portal that's being housed by Deloitte. So every school is now on a portal where every single NIL deal has to be vetted for valuation, accuracy, and payment. And accuracy meaning you can't overvalue or undervalue a player. So if you want to keep a player, like let's say there's a sponsor or donor at a university and they really want to keep that wide receiver there. And they say, I'm going to have them come do a commercial with me for my law firm here in whatever city they're in. And I'm going to pay them $50,000 to do it. It has to go through that portal, and that portal is going to come back out and say, 4 hours of his time, other NIL deals he's done, it's probably not worth 50,000. You need to revalue it. So what they're trying to do is put limitations on overvaluing or devaluing any particular player's brand, which is good. And it does have to go through a third party. And I believe it's Deloitte. Maybe check me on that. I believe Deloitte is going to be the clearinghouse. And then they've got lawyers on every side of this at every university that has to check the contracts. So the amount of compliance that this NCAA regulation has put on all these universities, the people they're going to have to hire, the lawyers they're going to need, the general counsel they're going to need, it's heavy. It's heavy. And that is going to be for everything over and above the salary cap. And the salary cap will have to pass through, or the rev share will have to pass through to the players in their designated numbers. And again, every university is going to look at it slightly different. So how they split up that rev share is up to them. They can use up to 75% as it stands for football, but if they had a track star or they had like a basketball player, like think about a UConn or a Duke, they're probably not going to spend a ton of money on football, but you know they're going to spend a lot of money on men's basketball. They're going to change how they pay the basketball team with rev share because they have the flexibility to do that. So again, it'll be there's so many things changing. It's still the wild, wild west. We have not even half of it figured out, but they're trying because payments are going to start on June 30th.
One thing that came up because I'm curious, because I know that women's sports took a back seat in the last 4 to 8 years. But what about Title IX? Like, are they
So,
required to pay women equally? Which obviously is not a revenue generator for the college,
right. So
except for
Title
some
IX has been in
sports.
this conversation from day one. And we haven't seen anything pass on it. It was brought up several times during the review and the re-review of this court case. There's nothing as of right now that they have passed that is going to impart Title IX on this. Now, that could change tomorrow. We could have something passed down, a ruling passed down that says X amount has to go to women's sports. But because the actual legal documentation states that it is on the sports that are revenue generating, what is the biggest revenue generator for any college?
Football.
Right. And they bring in more than 75% of the revenue to fund all the other sports. So the backlash on this is we want women's sports to have their fair shake, but where does the revenue come from? And this has been a battle in the during this settlement. It has been back and forth and back and forth. As of right now, Title IX hasn't won. I don't know if they will. If by the time this airs or people see this even 2 days from now, it could have changed. And so I'm watching it really closely, but as of right now, it's not coming into play.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think to me it's like wherever the revenue is generated, you have to give back to those. I mean, you could certainly. I mean, Title IX was about giving them equal opportunity, but
Yeah.
there is no such thing as fairness in the world, so you can't really.
And there's that. Well, and then think
You know,
about if I look at LSU, LSU's women's basketball, huge revenue generator.
no.
And LSU had the top earning gymnast for NIL for a few years. And she was making more than almost everybody else. I think she was the number one revenue generator on NIL for anyone in the country at one point. And she's fantastic at building a brand. She's absolutely brilliant at selling for other people. I mean, she's got partnerships with legging companies for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and she's absolutely. And I don't know all of her financials, nor would I ever even disclose them. Some of that stuff's public, like the legging company. You can see that she's all over their website. But she has made a very, very pointed effort to say, I am an athlete, but I'm a brand first, and she's made a killing off of it. She's a gymnast. That's not a revenue generating sport. And yet she's one of the highest paid NIL athletes in 2023, 2024. So it doesn't always require, I think, the sport to be revenue generating for the athlete to capitalize. But for the rev share piece, the athlete themselves can go build their brand and capitalize. But the rev share piece, yeah, it's going to come down to who makes the university money.
Yeah, and I think that's a good distinction because I think if you're playing for university and they want to keep you, they have to pay you. But the whole branding is totally separate. I mean, some people are geniuses at this,
Yeah.
and some people just are not. I mean, look at what Tiger Woods did. I mean, that guy made so much money off the brand. I mean, Michael Jordan too, another branding genius, or maybe I give credit to Nike because they're the ones that broached this. But either way, like two branding legends right there, right? And
Yes.
and there's others too, but I think there's definitely a difference between that, which is a skill, right, that not everybody has, and it's hard to do, and getting paid. So I think that's a good distinction. One question I had because I've noticed this recently in like college hockey. So I follow hockey more than
Me
anything else.
too. Go Stars.
Um, Good. Well, maybe not, but we did have a good team up until recently, and then I feel like they totally just
You
threw
guys
the whole.
lost Marchand, and I was so disappointed because Boston's my second favorite team, and I love the Garden.
We used to have a good team.
Yeah.
I think
Bergeron.
management decided to just say, yeah, we're just going to decide to lose for 10 years so that we can get some first rounders. Like, I don't know what they're doing. No one in this town is happy with the Bruins right now. But anyway, um, so one thing I've noticed in college hockey though is that especially after COVID, and I think COVID might have been part of this, but like it's also, I think it kind of falls into this as well, is a lot more players are swapping teams more quickly. So be on a team and they're like, well, he's not putting me in the first line. This other team, they're going to put me in the first line, so I'm going to go over there. And it's just back and forth. It's just like pros, like, oh, we're going to trade you here, and it's like, is that really the right message for kids in college? Like, why even send them to college? Just you're playing for the school. You don't actually go there. You're just playing athletics at the school, and maybe you get an education somewhere else. Like it almost seems like there's a disconnect between the sport, which seems more professional now, because if you're really not bought into the college, you're just a hired gun, and you're just like, all right, I'm going to play, and then the coach doesn't like me, I'm going to go somewhere else, and I don't know. It just seems messy to me. It doesn't seem like the way it should be, but maybe I'm wrong.
It's NFL free agency. That's what it feels like when the portal opens and
Exactly.
everybody goes
Right.
like all over the place, right?
But is that what should
Um,
happen in college, though? I mean, that's the thing that it just kind of irks me, I think.
That's the hard part about NIL because on one side, if they get put into first string on anything and they're visible and they have a brand, they can make more money, right? Like we were talking about, elevate your brand. If you're not seen, nobody knows your brand. If you're seen, even if it's not in the top schools, but you're killing it, people are going to recognize you and they're going to say, "Oh, what's that guy doing? Or what's that gal doing? Like, what are they up to?" And then they go follow you and then they start seeing what you're promoting. And it's becoming a business and it's becoming a brand more so than I think it is about the actual university. So when we see the portal open and all of those people jump ship and go to different teams and such, I think in their mind, they're treating it as a business transaction. Where can I go to make the most money, capitalize on my brand, and still play while being able to hopefully get my degree in the next 4 years simultaneously because that piece of it isn't going to make me as much money as NIL has the capacity to. So we're now seeing 18-year-olds make strategic business decisions on the colleges that they're picking because NIL has given them the opportunity to not only capitalize on the revenue share from colleges, but the brand that they build themselves on and the platform that they create. And so we're seeing two business decisions in one, and they're picking schools accordingly, which is why those portals, when they open, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane how many people move. Do I think it's great for college sports? Not at all. Do I think it's great for the business of the athlete? Absolutely. So it's that this is where NIL is turning college sports into a business instead of what it used to be, which was truly the healthy competition.
So do you think we'll start to see NIL filter down into D2, D3 schools? Like, I'm not sure the money's there, but do you think that'll happen?
I think those schools have enough of a following in their communities that those athletes could capitalize inside those communities or inside their hometowns, especially if they're coming from the South or Texas, where football is life, or they're coming from a city where basketball is life, and they were a killer high school player. They can capitalize on that. Hockey, same thing. I'm actually seeing guys coming out of Canada that have played hockey here in the United States. They're capitalizing back home because they can't capitalize in the U.S. If you're international, you cannot make money off NIL inside the U.S., but you can go home and do it.
Uh,
So all of our international students cannot make money on NIL inside the United States. They're on work visas, which means for all my tennis players that are from overseas, all my hockey players that are from Canada or Finland or any of the Nordic countries or Russia, they cannot make money on NIL inside the United States right now. That's completely not allowed, which is insane. So what they're doing is they're taking their brands, they're going to their hometowns, they're saying, I'm playing for XYZ college in the United States, and they're creating partnerships. Isn't that nuts? Like, just think about what it would take to do that at 18 or 19 years old while you're in school, while you're playing a sport, and now you're literally jumping country lines so that you're not doing anything illegal to make money. Um, that concept to me is just, it's crazy. At 18 years old, I wouldn't have thought about that. Now, maybe if I was born in this generation, I would have, but we were just concerned about paying our rent and making it to class on time.
it's a different generation for sure. Well, um, I mean, I think that's bananas that they can't pay. I mean, why wouldn't they pay the international students? I mean,
They pay them scholarship, and their scholarship is taxable because they're a foreign work visa. So they're not a U.S. Social Security number. They're usually here on a student visa. Because they're on a student visa, they get assigned a Social Security number with the student visa caveat, and then they get their scholarship checks, which are then taxable. But the United States students, anyone on scholarship who is a U.S. citizen, scholarship checks are not taxable for US citizens. So the international students that are coming in, they have a whole set of different tax guidelines and regulations on them than US citizens do. And that's fine. Whatever the tax laws are the tax code. I'm not going to fight the tax code. It is what it is. But yeah, there not only are their scholarships checks taxable, but they cannot do business in the United States because they're here on a work visa. They're not here on a H-1B work. They're not here on a work visa. I'm sorry, they're here on a student visa, so they can't be working. And doing NIL deals is, in essence, being a business operating inside the United States. Can't do that.
You can't be an independent contractor on a student visa?
Not as of
Wow.
right now.
I didn't know
Now
that.
there is
That's interesting.
someone. There was a student who went and fought it, an international student who went and fought it, and I don't know if she won. But as of shoot, 3 weeks ago, before this house settlement, inside the house settlement, they may have changed the rules on international students utilizing NIL inside the states, but they couldn't capitalize on any NIL deals inside the US.
Hmm.
Isn't that
Interesting.
crazy?
Yeah, that's nuts. I mean,
They
things are gonna move fast, I'm sure.
even the LSU kids that are all my international students, because we have a lot of swimmers that are international, tennis players that are international. Hey, Hill, have they passed it yet? Can I make money here yet? And my answer to this date has been not yet. I'm still waiting for the green light. But yeah, it's we talk about the portal and everybody moving. They're making business decisions, but then we have our international students who can't do any of it. It's the wild, like you said. I've been using that term too, so I love that you said wild, wild west. It's the wild west when it comes to NIL and college money and the trickle up effect into the pros. It's vastly different the last 3 years.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. We could probably talk for hours on this.
Oh yeah.
Where any final thoughts and where can people find more about you?
Yeah, so I'm just a big proponent of learn as much as you can. And so my entire company is built around education. We've got free resources on our website, financialfootwork.com. You can follow us on social, financialfootwork.com on all the social platforms. And we have college and employee workbooks that help people really truly get the money mindset right so that the cash flow moves. Outside of that, we just like to be a resource and help people learn.
Awesome. Well, Hillary, really appreciate you coming on the show. And we'll probably have you back on in the future because I'm sure this will change probably tomorrow. So,
3 weeks from now.
yeah, awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Kirk.
Hey, Doug, did you hear? We're giving away free money. Well, I'll tell you about it in a minute, but before I do, there's a saying in the mining community, well, precious metals mining, that is. The saying is that if you want the best deals, you have to be in the room. Now, you're probably thinking, what does it mean to be in the room? Well, I'll tell you. Being in the room means that you're on the short list of people who get invited to be a part of the best deals. These are the deals that most investors will never have access to. You mean like IPOs? Nope, IPOs are chump change. Those are for retail investors, small potatoes. That's nothing compared to these deals. These deals would have you salivating to get access to them. Once you know they exist, you will never look at investing the same way again. I almost don't want to even tell you that they exist because it will ruin your thinking of how the investing world really works. Now, you might be excited that these deals exist, but you only have access to the deals if you're an insider, or in the room as they call it. Now, as loyal listeners to the show, I'm going to give you a chance to be in the room. Money Tree Investing Podcast has created the Insiders Club. This is a community of our show's members who are loyal listeners of the show and want to get more out of their investing experience. Being a part of the Insiders Club gives you insider status for upcoming events and webinars, discounts, free stuff and books, and influence on the future direction of the show. This is a great opportunity to join us as we expand our content and services. Oh, and did I mention free money? Yes, in the next few weeks, I'll be giving away free money to our members of the Insiders Club as my appreciation for listening to the show. Now, there's no cost to join the Insiders Club. Just go to moneytreepodcast.com/free money today to join the community. That's www.moneytreepodcast.com/free money. I hope to see you in the room. All right, that was a great interview with Hillary. Really appreciate her coming on the show. Now we're into the panel portion of the show. We have our very own Diana Perkins. Hey, Diana.
Hi, Kirk. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And we also have our very own Doug Hagren. Hey, Doug.
Another good day and talk about another dollar.
Nice, nice. Well, let's get started. So, Diana, what were some of your takeaways from the interview?
I think the biggest takeaway for me, and this will be no surprise because it's my wheelhouse, is the huge gap in financial education. And I thought it was really interesting how organizations like the NFL and NBA are taking huge steps and are acknowledging that gap and educating their players. So that was probably the biggest takeaway for me. And then the other one, and this has come up in other conversations recently, is just that transition into retirement. And it's really interesting, no matter what your age, what your profession, almost that loss of, identity and that plan moving forward and the mindset around that beyond just the numbers, how important that is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Doug, what are some of your takeaways?
Well, I think some of the biggest takeaways is, you know, um, be careful what you ask for. It's one of these things where, I mean, we look and consider individuals who have achieved immense amounts of opportunity and wealth as ultimately the goal that, from a financial standpoint, we all wish it could be, right? If you dream of the athlete and the career and all of the spoils that come with it. But unfortunately, there is incredible opportunity. And it's always, it is always good to get your money now, right? Because we all know the power of compounding interest, right? If you can get it today, you will always be better than someone who gets it later if all apples, if it's apples to apples, if you all do the same thing, right? The problem is not doing the same thing. The problem is that it can create this imaginary world that they live in that is so easy that it is difficult that they don't look at the challenges that come with it and prepare for when those times may change. And there's just so many stories about that out there. And so with all of the opportunity that comes there, and so be careful what you ask for. And when you get it, there are a lot of challenges. There's a lot of things that also come with that aren't easy. But with the right education, with the right opportunity, like she talks about, with the discipline that many of them already know, there is an incredible opportunity ahead of them, but they haven't spent their lives learning this. And if you just hand it to them and say good luck with you, then unfortunately, that doesn't always work out. And the last thing I'll say, the psychology part of it is that if you have had something and it gets taken away, it is absolutely infinitely much more difficult than have never having it in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really interesting. I mean, I've done a lot of research on the lottery winner. I call it the lottery winner syndrome. I didn't make it up, but that's the term I use. And these athletes have worked really hard to get there, and they've focused on one thing, and they've become the best in the world at it. And it's like anybody, right? Any sort of expertise. Maybe you're the best violinist or pianist or artist or whatever it is, and you work really hard and you focus all your efforts there, and then you get this pile of money. The lottery winner syndrome is typically when people have nothing and then all of a sudden they've got a lot, and it's not earned over a lifetime. And it was odd because I did the research and I looked at like the average athlete in different sports and found out that most sports, the average athlete makes the same amount as a W-2 employee through their entire life. And the difference is the athlete earns it when they're young, and every employee, they earn it over their lifespan. So if you F up as an employee, well, I can keep earning. But if you F up as an athlete, which is highly likely because most athletes are male, and their brains aren't really fully developed till they're 30. You tend to make a lot of stupid mistakes. That's what we do, right? And so you make mistakes, but you can't afford to make mistakes because you're earning all your money up front. And so if you make a mistake up front, you can't easily earn it back if if your earning potential is derived strictly from your athletic abilities, and you don't have the intellectual capacity to have a great job to earn great money afterwards. And a lot of players are not the smartest bulbs. I'm not saying they're dumb, but like they're not, brain surgeons. And so, what is your earning potential after that, right? And so the question is how do you really prepare these people for something they're not prepared for? And the same and it's not just them, but it's a lottery winner. You work a 9 to 5 job, you're a janitor or whatever, you're just earning a living and you're doing your work and then you win the lottery and all of a sudden now you got like $20 million dollars and you've been making no more than 30,000 a year. That's going to mess you up because you're not prepared for it, right? And you're mentally not equipped for that kind of a wealth dropping in your lap. Same thing applies for inheritances. You inherit a lot of money and you didn't earn it. And I think that the challenge is that you didn't develop the skills along the way to know how to accept this gift and burden at the same time. And that's why most people lose all the money because they don't understand how to do it, right? So, lottery winners, they go buy a bunch of condos in Vegas, they go buy a bunch of cars, they do a bunch of weird stuff. And what they don't realize is where's the cash flow to support all that? And they don't have the cash flow. So they just buy it and now they got to sell it because they spent all their money. Oops. And so I think that's the challenge. When you're young, these athletes, they spend all their money with their posse and their boys and they have fun and they should have fun, but they buy their mom a house, but then that stops. And then what are you going to do? And some of them are smart and they use that cachet they have as an athlete, transfer it to a business, and they generate revenue. That's smart. Magic Johnson was brilliant at this. He spoke at a TV conference years ago. I was shocked at how bright this guy was as a businessman. The stuff he was doing, he's either got a great team or he's just super smart. I don't know him well enough to know which one it is. Either way, he still has a great team because he surrounds himself with good people. But I heard him speak and I was just floored. I was like, wow, this guy's brilliant. And the stuff he's done, I think he's worth like $500 million now. It's some crazy number because he's just turned his fame and his sports acumen into success in business. And it's not just his name because I've heard him talk like he's a smart business guy, but he took that and used that as his initial funding, his cachet is his name into business, and then he learned and got better. And I think more athletes need to be better at that because there's a huge value in that name that they can utilize. So even if they blow all the money, they still have the name, but they have to actually, take that next step. So, um, what are your thoughts, Diane? I mean, uh, when you're working with people that just inherit a lot of money or come into wealth really quickly, what should people be thinking about, if they're in that position?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm actually working with a new client right now who's in that category. And one of the things that we're working on is so I specialize in trading, right? Trading education, and he happens to be an options trader as well, and wants to manage his risk based on this entire lump sum that he's now realized, which is a large sum he'll retire on. And so we're walking through the steps of, trading on a simulated account and experimenting with new strategies, risk management that way, because it's very different from a psychological standpoint and this is trading specifically, but to, work with, we'll say a $10,000 account versus say a 500,000, $1 million account, right? Psychologically losing, $10,000 on one position, it hits a little harder for most people than $1,000. So I think, first and foremost is acknowledging that mental shift that occurs. And then also, in the context of, these pro athletes, when you think about their environment and the influences, and this was talked about, quite a bit in the interview, is just those opportunities that come to you. So whether it's, the lottery and friends and family are coming out of the woodwork, or you're a pro athlete and you're looking at new deals to, I think it was talked about, investing in hotels, in restaurants, record deals, and vetting those opportunities. It's great because new opportunities, tend to open up, but also it's a level of discernment. So it comes back to that mindset around money management, no matter what the source of that income is.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've worked with some athletes in the past, but I look at them as high risk clients. They're I was thinking about this as you're talking, Diana. I mean, if you think about athletes, they haven't developed the skill financial management, right? Because they haven't had the time to develop it. Um, and I think in many ways, like some professions, they're really good at one thing and they think that will overlay into something else. And they're like, oh, I'm a really good athlete. So, hey, I know how to make money. I'll invest in these properties and these deals and my buddies. And they don't have that skill. And so they falsely think that that'll just map over because they're just gifted in one area, they're gifted in another. And it's a learned skill. I will just say this and I'll take it over to Doug. Um, the one thing I've seen a lot is business owners that sell their business. So if you're a business owner, let's say you sell your business for like $100 million. As a business owner, you have a very strong skill as a business owner. Business owner skills are different than managing $100 million in wealth that you've obtained. In many ways, they're the exact opposite skills. The skills you need to be successful as a business owner are almost the opposite of the skill you need to be successful in maintaining your wealth. And it's a very hard transition. And these are successful business owners that have earned that skill over time. It's a different skill than managing money. And I think the challenge that a lot of people don't realize is the skill set needed are different in different situations. And it's a skill you need to earn, right? I mean, you've made mistakes, Diana, right? And we all do. That's your cost of education, right? You don't make it with $100 million portfolio. You make it with $1,000. That's an okay mistake. 100 million is not a good mistake to make. So I think that's just kind of a point that people need to be taking home is that no matter what you are, what profession you're in, no matter where you're coming from, the skill sets do not map over the same, generally speaking. Even if you're successful in one area and you think it's the same, it's not. It is very different. It is a hard skill to pick up. It is a lot of psychology, as you said. And people need the time. Just need time. Like you need the reps, right? You're a good athlete, taking reps, hitting balls. You're taking a lot of reps. You need reps at the plate for investing too. You need to make your mistakes. You need to see, oh, well, I screwed that one up, but without all the money. So, what do you think, Doug? What are some ways that people can be thinking about this?
Well, I think, the thing that people need to be thinking about is if you've got to have a plan for for all that you do. I mean, I think you mentioned there's so many different ways to go with this. This is one I'd actually, Kirk, love to come back and have a deeper conversation about because
We
I
can talk
think
about it on
this
Friday, Doug.
yeah, I think this is absolutely absolutely just a great conversation to continue to talk about. But I think that one of the things, by the way, I want to say this really quickly. You talked about Magic Johnson's cachet. You were a little off on his cachet. His cachet now is about 1.5 billion now. That's what he's worth.
Oh, I saw him 10 years ago, so obviously it's
Yeah,
been even
yeah.
better.
So, there's that thing called there's inflation and growth, etc. Um, but ultimately, I think the big thing here is there's so many we talked about NIL was something that came up there and I think that's a huge huge piece. I mean, you're starting to see people get these money at younger ages. I think some of the schools out there, like one of the schools that I follow is just sponsored to do more financial education, but I mean some of these kids are not even going to make it through 3 years of college and they may never have a career again, but they may make more money in those 3 years of college now than some pro athletes will make in their entire career. Um, I think that I think that there's 10 predictable failure points that I think really go and hit. I mean, first of all, windfalls don't make you rich. The key is that systems do. Um, if you get big income with no plan, that's just going to be a louder path to broke. First thing, lifestyle ratchet. Fixed costs scale up faster than income downscales. You've got to worry about tax drag. There's limited no withholdings, 1099 surprises. There's penalties. There's interest. I mean, the way a lot of these, again, if you're going to, especially for a lot of these individuals that are getting these windfalls, are they able to set that up in a business structure? There's only there's about 90 ways you have to pay tax. There's about 90,000 ways that you can avoid tax. Unfortunately, as most people know, a lot of that is in business, right? So if you're not structured properly, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that. And that's why a lot of individuals, 1099s, W-2 struggle. You get pitched all the time. There's so many bad, can't miss pitches, zero filters. So you got to worry about bad deal flow, trust misplacement. You mentioned friends, family, CFOs, unvetted advisors, conflicting agents, debt creep, leveraging on depreciating toys. There's been so many stories you hear about this person. It's like they've got 20 million in assets and 100 million in debt, and it's you find out that they're getting repoed on cars and and all of these things. There's recourse obligations that occur. There's illiquidity trap. I mean, a lot of times these deals that they get pitched, that money goes into it. Diversification is important, but one of the things that I've always talked about with my clients, and I've mentioned this with you, Kirk, many times, that the number one cause of financial stress is lack of access to capital. When you need to get money and you can't get it, and it doesn't matter what you're worth, if it's all tied up, that's going to be a massive issue. So private deals and real estate syndicates, like you talked about the hotels and stuff, or capital calls at the worst time. And then, no income plan, all accumulation, no distribution. They've got paper wealth, but weak cash flow, as you mentioned before. Being able to afford to maintain all of these things is really difficult. Cash flow is king. It's king in everything that I talk about. I know that you do options. Options is a lot about cash flow, right? It's a lot about generating cash flow and assets you have. And ultimately, I think personally believe that one of the most important things that anybody can do, and Magic Johnson and Shaquille O'Neal is another great example that did, is they have diversified not only their wealth but their cash flow. From Five Guys Burgers or the Star, that Shaq's involved with, or the Starbucks that Magic Johnson involved with. Which, let's just face it, there's a lot of people that bought into brands that didn't do well. They definitely hit two home runs there. But those things are not only investments that they're in, but they continuously kick back income to them. But then, what happens? All of a sudden, something goes wrong, and now you've got legal and asset exposure. And whether or not you did it, you were what's the word I'm looking for? Negligent in something, or they just come out of the woodwork because they see you as some sort of a ticket. You got to worry about, constantly the attorneys, the suits, the endorsements gone wrong, weak entity schedule or a structure. And then ultimately, boom, your career ends early. And now you've got that psychology. What you've been working on for 15, 18, 25 years, now there's no purpose, no discipline transfer, an identity crash that comes along. And then, one of the other things is, that I'm tied to, and I hate to say it, for some of these people, they've got lots of kids, more kids than they should have. Now all of a sudden you're covering childcare and you're covering, alimonies, or you're covering again, for college, again, average kid costs $250,000. For many of them, their average kids cost $2 million. So ultimately, you've got to create these systems and these plans. You've got to have a money team or organization, the right people, the tax professionals, the attorneys, insurance professionals, forensic bookkeepers, people that know how to segregate those funds, keep weekly cash. You've got to be able to manage an architecture that prepares for certain amount for taxes, certain amount for a forever fund, opportunity bucket, lifestyle play. you've got to be able to break these things down into systems and different places that they don't bleed into the other. And I know that, again, I could talk about this for a long point. I just lost my mouse, so I can't scrape it. But I will go back to, a couple of great examples of how systems in place, whether they controlled it or not, have saved them. Allen Iverson, Bobby Bonilla, even Shaquille O'Neal have talked about, or have, if they haven't talked about, the stories have come out about how some aspect of that money that they received was locked away. It was segregated. Shaquille has a ton of money that he has, got put into annuity. He talks about it. That money's going to pay him forever. Bobby Bonilla's contract was deferred with the Mets. He's going to keep getting paid longer than people who started their careers years after them and made more money because that structure, which sounded ridiculous at the time, just continues to allow him something you cannot outspend. And then Allen Iverson, same thing. They took a huge portion of his contract, threw in a trust. He blew all of his other money. But now he's going to have money coming in that is going to allow him to survive. And I think that we underestimate the power of some of these things. Like I talk to clients all the time. It's like, well, I'm not getting enough return here. I want more. It's not always about that. It's about diversification of many different things. Diversification of the assets you buy, diversification of your incomes, diversification of your assets. As I said, this is such a big contract, and I'm not even getting into even deeper levels of psychology or different types of people and getting into like lump sum versus annuities on life insurance. I mean, this just fascinates me. This is something I have looked at for a long, long, long time.
Yeah. No, it's really cool. I want to touch on the NIL. I want to get your guys' opinion on this because I've got so many thoughts on this, and it's I'm not sure there's a clear answer. I think it's great and terrible at the same time, but I don't know. Do you follow this, Diana? What do you think of the NIL strategy or the NIL updates that's going on?
Yeah, I think I feel like it's fascinating, right? Because you think about who's bringing the money in and you want to give credit where it's due. So in that sense, I'm for it. But it almost feels like a little premature and like it's turning college sports into a business and it lacks almost like that authenticity. That side of it. And I mean, I'm a businesswoman through and through. I mean, I was charging my sister interest when I was 9. So I like, I do have a respect on that level, but there is something about it that doesn't sit completely well with me. I mean, when you're college age and you're focused on your studies, well, if you're an athlete, you're focused on your athletics, and then to bring this other variable in. I think if it's managed right and going back to that education piece. I know one of the things that came up around a lawsuit that occurred and there were back payments for NIL athletes from 2016 forward and in 1099 payments, no tax withholdings, and then those athletes are hit with a big bill when they leave college. And in some cases, it sounds like it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I think thinking about the responsibility around it, the communication around it, are they athletes because they're part of this college program, or are they starting their job a little early and taking, some of the fruit at that time? I can see why you're torn, Kirk. I can definitely see both sides of this one.
Yeah, what do you think, Doug?
Oh boy. This is another one.
I'm
We can do an all
not sure we
episode
have
on.
enough time for this, but
As
go ahead,
as we
Doug.
all know, as you know, Kirk, if I and again, I don't know I don't know how involved, but based on comments you made, Diane, I think you're a casual sports fan. I tend to be on the end of the spectrum where it borders on fanatic. Which, by the way, for those listening, that's the whole the word fan. That's what it comes from, fanatic. So I follow it very, very closely, and my favorite sport is college football. So that has, of course, put me right into right at the headlights of seeing how this has come down. Um, this is like so many things. It is a pendulum shift, and it is a pendulum shift that, most pendulums there's a very heavy ball at the bottom, and if you're in the way of it, you're going to get knocked over and injured. And that's exactly what's happening with NIL. Um, this started as something in where there was a system that unfortunately we have a world in which Diane, you just what age did you say you started a business at 9?
Oh, my first business was 12, but I was charging interest to my sister at 9 years old.
There you go. So you started your first business you started usury at 9 and then another type of business at 12. Right. So the point is you now when you went to college, nobody was telling you what you could do in college. You could go out and work, you could go out and do a side business, you could do whatever you wanted. Nobody said no to that. But the NCAA created rules around student athletes that made it to where it was almost impossible for them to make money doing anything. And there's stories of NCAA athletes really not even having trouble, like even having enough money to eat and starve. And people laugh about that because they see the buffets that the football team puts on. Well, first of all, the football team only got that during the football season. Number one. Number two, that was only when the team was together. Other sports didn't have that. They were highly, highly restricted. And so there was a lawsuit. O'Bannon, I forget it was the O'Bannon lawsuit. I forget exactly who it was with against, but I think it was O'Bannon versus the NCAA, where basically it was a class action lawsuit in 2014, where he basically said, look, he was a UCLA player, a former. He argued the NCAA's use of his likeness in video games without compensation violated antitrust laws, and the courts sided with him. In other words, like, wait a second, the NCAA is making all this money on us. We can't go out and make any money ourselves. We're basically kicked off the team, all of our eligibility pulled away because, somebody, and again, as an Ohio State fan, basically because they've got these little gold pennants for beating Michigan, and then they went out and said, hey, you know what? We want tattoos. Well, we don't have any money, but we've got our pennants, and they did this trade, and it became a huge scandal. Okay. So ultimately, what happened is eventually this thing started going through the courts, and the court said, you know what? This is absolutely unconstitutional. You cannot tell someone they can't go make money. And then you cannot use their name, image, and likeness and then completely not pay them. And it started in the private colleges because, of course, the private colleges, it's a different situation. They're not regulated differently. They're differently than the states. And so they passed these things to start to move it to where student athletes can make money. But they don't like to call it name, image, and likeness. They like to call it NIL for a reason. Because unfortunately, all of a sudden, with all these lawsuits going around, the NCAA's power just went like this. And what that meant is that, and let's just let the secret out there. Student athletes were getting paid under the table for a long time. And now, all of a sudden, it became, and certain schools did this better than others. Now everybody could pay. But unfortunately, as the hand of the NCAA got chopped and chopped and chopped, there basically became no regulation. So now what did NIL become? It's not paying people for their name, image, and likeness. It's being paid, donations are going to boosters and then to schools to basically pay them to play. And so, again, this is something I could go off on for a long, long time, but you are handing now some of these contracts, and nobody knows exactly what they are because a lot of it's private money. It's supposed to be deals and sponsorships. Now you've got these situations where they're finding out even at the NBA level, the Clippers, there was a scandal that just came out where the Clippers, they're supposed to have collective bargaining, supposed to be caps, salary caps. Nope, turns out they've got one of the I forget his name, went to the Clippers, and it now turns out that the contract he signed, well, there was millions of dollars more in NIL to show up for a job that didn't exist. Okay. So what we have now is a completely unregulated system, people just throwing money in under the table just to recruit and pay them to play outside of these contracts. Welcome to the wild, wild west. But now you've got kids that are getting this in high school. You've got kids that are getting this in college. You're getting millions of dollars. Some of these kids are getting $2.5 million just to come to a school, be paid. They may not have the skills to play anywhere in college. They may not even make it through college, much less the NFL. This entire thing is an unregulated disaster. And so where I agree with it is, yes, you can't tell these people they can't make money. You can't tell these people that you're going to steal their name, image, and likeness and make billions and billions of dollars and leave them starving. But at the same time, Now that the slippery slope has started, where do you regulate? This is a bigger conversation about regulation than it is even finance.
I think those are great points, Doug. It's funny. I think it was like 15 years ago. South Park did an episode. I forget what it was called, but it was basically um, Cartman was wearing this white Southern gentleman plantation owner coming in and be like, and he was talking to the NCAA or it was talking to one of the colleges, and he's like, oh, how are you doing this? How are you taking advantage of these students? And he's like, well, he's talking to, we don't have to pay our athletes. He's like, oh, athletes. And it's basically like mapping over on slavery. And it was a hilarious episode, and how colleges are completely taking advantage of athletes. And so, you know, as an athlete
South Park
myself,
and Simpsons were always ahead of the curve.
oh, way, way ahead of the curve, by far. I mean, I've always been an athlete, and want my kids to be athletes, and they both play hockey, and I love hockey. It's just, I think uh, as a tool to help people become better people versions of themselves. I love hockey as a sport. I think it is one of the few sports that you learn a lot about life, and it's just I can meet somebody across the world who plays hockey and we can instantly bond. There's just something about it. I don't know what it is. I didn't find that in other sports, but with hockey it certainly is. Um, but I can say one thing because my kids are one's in high school, one's in junior high, and they're kind of growing through the sports. And I remember when I was in college, we had that race with who was it? It was Ken Griffey Jr., McGuire, and was it Bonds? Was it the home run derby? Was it those three? Yeah. So I remember that. And I remember taking a class at the time, the psychology of sport, and it was really interesting. And they were talking about,
Sammy
steroids.
Sosa. It was Bonds, McGuire, and Sammy Sosa.
Sosa, that's who it was. That's right. Thank you for correcting me. So that was so much fun to watch. It was so cool. Three guys competing to see who's going to break the record, it was so much fun to watch. And baseball just said, "All right, great. We're just going to let it happen because we're making tons of money and people are watching." Totally get it, right? Um, and I think one of the challenges is I looked at it from a different angle. I said, yeah, this as a fan, so much fun to watch. I'm not sure you could do that again. Like it was fun the first time, but like you did it again, I was like, all right, whatever. But I think one of the challenges because I played baseball and hockey in college, as a two-sport athlete, and it was a lot of fun. But I reflected a lot on it because I was thinking, like, am I going to continue to play? And for baseball, I had much better chances than hockey. I loved hockey, but hockey is just one of these things. I would have been playing in the minor leagues for a long time, and I'm not sure I wanted to do that. Baseball, I had an opportunity, and I decided to just hang them up at the end of college because it's just one of the things that I found. One of my friends who also he ended up playing pro. He kind of clued me in on this. He basically said in the minor leagues they come to you if you have a shot at the show. They come to you and say, if you want to get to the show, you need to get stronger. Wink, wink, nod, nod. You need to start doing steroids. And that was the unspoken rule of what you needed to do to get to the show back then. I was unwilling to do that, and I was like, I'm not going to go through this grinder. It's hard enough. And then you got to compete with people that are on steroids. And I could hit the ball far, but there was nothing you could tell me, no amount of money you could give me that would make me destroy my body on steroids. No amount of money. I was like, nah, not going to do it. Um, and that was my choice. And so I find it to be a similar overlay of, you're basically you're putting kids that just want to compete and play the sport for the love of the game in a position where it destroys the sport. So I look at the NIL and I totally think that the athletes should be paid 100%. F the colleges. They've been taking advantage of kids for a long time. They should be paying these kids 110%. However, as you said, Doug, it's messy. It is very messy. And I can tell you from even a young age, when I grew up playing hockey, you played because you loved the game. You absolutely played for the love of the game. It wasn't for the money. Of course, you wanted to make money, but even the professional athletes, like like the Bruins, after a game, I figured it was like in the 80s, they would literally go out to the bar across the street and just have a bunch of beers and fans would be there and it was just like you just did it. You just loved playing the game. It wasn't about the money. And since like the 90s, I forget when it started, maybe the 90s, but all of a sudden money became the reason you played the sport. Oh, they're making $100 million contract. Oh my God, well, I need 150. And it just took over the game. And now it's different. Like as I've pushed my kids through the sport as they've grown up, it's the money has completely destroyed um, the sport. And I want to differentiate the sport from the game. I love the game. I hate the sport right now. Absolutely hate the sport because it's all about money. It's always there's always been politics. So just be clear. Like that's always been in sports and that never changes. But there's like an aspect of it which is, well, if you want to be good, you got to do these things. And these things cost a lot of money. And there's some great funny TikTok videos of this of like one dad and two dads talking like, "Ugh, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry your kid made tier one elite. I'm so sorry." He's like, "I know, I know. I got to get a second mortgage on my house now." Like, it's just, money has completely destroyed it because you have to compete. And if you want to compete, you got to spend a lot of money, and not everybody can afford that. And not only that, but it's taken the love of the game out because now it's just, well, you got to compete, so you got to do these things. And if you don't do these things, and it's not about just doing it because you love it, it's doing it because you have to and you got to follow the steps. And so when I see the NIL happen and I see the athletes getting paid, love it. Just want to be clear, love the fact they're being paid. I think they should have been paid long ago. I thought that was totally bullshit the whole time. But now the side effect of that is, and I know this from talking to people, so you've got to, so when I went to high school, right, the coaches, his word was the word. You never second guessed it. He said something, you're like, all right, I'm going to shut up now. I'm not going to say anything, right? You just, like, that was the job of a coach, was to make you a better person, a better player, and you respected his authority, right? It's just what you did, right? But
That's a South
now,
Park reference for your
yes,
listeners.
yeah, thanks, Doug. Some people wouldn't have got that. But basically, what's happening now in college, especially college hockey, is the coaches are competing. They're basically they have to not only coach and manage a team, but they have to manage the personalities. And I'm not talking about like Dennis Rodman personality. I'm talking about uh, D1 hockey. Let's say you're on a good team and you're not on the power play. Well, if I'm not in the power play, I'm not going to get the contract to go pro. So I'm going to move to a different school that's going to put me on the power play and they're going to compete. So they're going to give me, I'm going to get money there and I'm going to be on the power play. The coach said so, so I'm going to move. So now you've got this, because back in the day with sports, like the Red Sox, you had the same team every year. It didn't change, right? You're on the team, you played for 20 years and then you retired. Now it's like every year they're trading people, which whatever. I think that's kind of messed with the game a little bit. But now you've got that in college. So now a kid's like, well, I'm not happy because I'm not in the power play. So I want to go somewhere I can be on the power play. So now the coach has to manage that on top of the fact they're managing the team. So how do you coach a kid that can just say, F you, coach, I'm going somewhere else? You're not giving me the respect, which is not how sports are. The players give the coach respect, not the reverse. The coach doesn't give, I mean, they give him some respect, but you have to earn it. You don't just get it by asking or demanding. In the old days, you did that, you get kicked off the team. You didn't tell the coach what to do, but now the players are in charge. So it's the crazies are in charge of the nut house, right? It's like you've got the mob in charge. It's like politics, right? You've got a president. Well, what if the mob's in charge? Well, that's a dangerous thing, right? That's not a good thing when the mob is in charge. So now you have that in sports. Now you got the team is in charge, not the coach. So it, it it's totally changed the dynamics of the sport, and I really don't like what it's become. And and like I said, I don't know what the right answer is. Just crystal clear. I don't know what the right answer is. But I know money is completely destroying sports, in my opinion, from just a love of the game kind of thing. I'm just doing it because I love it and just seeing what's happening. I don't love what's happening. It's just different.
I want
So
to add something really quick in there. Perfect example you just pointed on. So, Urban Meyer went from Ohio State, left there, and then he went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he was terrible there. It was a disaster of drama because he's an old school, I'm just gonna psychologically browbeat you type of coach, okay?
yeah,
Which worked in college when you basically had these kids under the thumb. It doesn't work in the pros because these guys have families, contracts, all of this stuff. They are professionals. And I think that is a great tie back to this conversation today because she was you or she talked about they're used to being coached, and that mindset can be good for them to go into the workforce, right? But now the college game has changed completely. Now colleges, the player, of the player recruitment specialists, the ones that found those high schoolers, they are now basically de facto GMs, general managers. They actually title in general managers. They have got to manage not only finding new people, but managing the roster contract. Unlike the NFL, though, where the contract, I mean, you get these head cases that like have a 3 year contract and then 1 year in they want to renegotiate. Most of the time, they're locked for 3 to 4 years. NIL in college is not that. It is there's no contract whatsoever. This is the wild west of chaos.
maybe they
So
need a
these
contract, Doug. Maybe that's the solution.
that's the thing. They need a contract. If we're going to go this route, they don't have it because there is never going to be a collective bargaining at the college level because there's no organization. It's not part of an entity like the NFL. So now these kids, I think again, I don't want to take too long, but these kids are no longer able to be coached. Like you talk about NFL coaches, I think are having more success at the college level because they're actually the mindset is becoming that. It is now not about just coaching and teaching them and learn. No, it is roster management. It is contract management. Oh, and don't think for a second it's not booster management more than ever because now they're writing checks for $2.5 million for the quarterback of your school. You better play him. It's like he sucks. He's a freshman. He doesn't know what he's doing. Well, you know what? You're fired. We're no longer writing these checks. So they're managing all of these distractions at the same time. But here's what I fear the takeaway is. These kids, like I said, they're gonna get $1.5 million contract because of their name. I hate to say it, Arch Manning, so far, terrible. He's making tons of money off of the grift of his family name, but he hasn't shown he has the skills. I feel bad for the guy. The pressure is there. But some of these kids are just getting the hype, and then they get $2 million that come in and they don't play. It may be the only money they ever have, but the problem is now, and here's a great one. Nico, I'm a Lieva, Tennessee. His dad wanted him to be in UCLA because that's where his brother is. He wanted him to be out there. He was a good quarterback with a lot of potential at Tennessee, and Tennessee did well with him. They get in a contract spat. He wants more money. Tennessee won't do it. He goes to UCLA. He'll never play in the NFL now. He's terrible out there. It's a disaster. They have no line. He has ruined his future for this chase of money. And unfortunately, there's two sides of it. Not only does it destroy the ability to see the big picture of what the career could be, but going back to what you guys talked about in your panel, there's how do you coach at a time that they are extremely impressionable? How do you coach the discipline that was talked about that could translate into, hey, if you have a short career, you can do great in the workforce. But now you can't coach that into them. And so this entitlement that comes earlier than ever. What does that mean? We're going to start seeing this in a number of years. The number of kids that are coming out of college that didn't have the discipline, didn't have the training, didn't have the career, but now are incapable of the mindset to do anything else. And that scares me.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. One point I'll make here that that scares me even more than what's going on now is what is the natural next step? The natural next step is this goes from pro to college to high school. So that's
Already
the natural
happening.
progression. High schools are going to be next, and they're going to be doing the same thing, and that is going to completely destroy kids because they are not high school kids should just be doing it for the love of the game, not because they're trying to make money. And I'll be appalled if that happens, and I know it's going to happen because it inevitably it has to. Anyway. So we're going to wrap
High
it up. So
schoolers
Diana,
making millions in social media are not showing that they fare well in real life. It's just
yeah,
it is there's a
I know,
certain point and it's too young and the maturity doesn't match what you can get.
agreed. So Diana, we're going to wrap it up here. So final thoughts from you.
Yeah, yeah. So to close it out, I would go back to, money without education, structure, it rarely lasts. Whether, lottery, inheritance, pro athlete, making it big early on. I think that's really the thread across all of this. And then the other part is just, just having that right mindset. I think the statistic was about 80% of these pro athletes move into a corporate role because they can follow a game plan, right? So I think that mindset transition, the gap in financial education. I wish every professional organization had something like this, but even better would be high school or mandatory college class around basic financial know-how and taxes and things that you deal with as an adult. And then the other part is just that discernment factor. I think, Hillary mentioned in the interview, out of the 700 plus, business plans that were put in front of these athletes as, investment opportunities, I think, two actually, were up to snuff. So if you do find yourself in a position, whether inheritance, if you're if you're a pro athlete, entrepreneur who made it big early on, trader that made it in, big early on, be discerning, be smart, think strategically. I'm Diana Perkins. I'm the CEO and founder of Trading with Diana, where I teach everyday people how to invest in the stock markets with confidence. You can learn more on my website at tradingwithdiana.com. Thanks so much, Kirk, for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks, Diana. Yeah, totally agree. I mean, athletes are very capable people and they just need the right direction. So, Doug, final thoughts from you.
Yeah, to tag on to what Diana just said, I mean, Ohio State University, there's a sponsorship that just happened with their star player, Jeremiah Smith, to basically work on providing NIL, financial education to the players to help to handle all of the new different world that they're now living in. And I think that is so. So the good news is there, at least on a micro level, there is some accountability that is starting to occur to try to get education. It may in some ways, and we've seen this kind of brewing in the past, but it may in some ways, because it's so chaotic, help to, even though I don't know if it's going to catch up as fast as the problems could be created, there is at an underground level some financial education that is now going to be and is already being started at the micro level in a lot of these institutions to start to get ahead of the problem of not having the education along with the wealth and the opportunities. And so from there, this may be in a time in which, for the first time ever in colleges, at least to those individuals, they are starting to get that kind of education and maybe be able to, even whether it's the ones making the millions or the ones making the hundreds, be able to get information and coaching in this area that will set them up on a better foot than those athletes in the past. It was just never discussed. So today's takeaway is simple. I mean, sudden money magnifies small mistakes. It's not the pile, it's the paycheck you can keep when the spotlight fades. You got to build guardrails, you got to filter the swindles, you got to keep fixed costs low, you got to turn lump sums into durable income. And remember, one other thing that I'm tied to very closely, college planning, is wealth planning. Tuition is an after-tax drain. If you're going to pay $400,000 for college, you might need to earn $650,000 to pay it if you don't have the right type of plan. So if you just want to give $250,000 away to the government in your college plan, go right ahead. But unfortunately, that can quietly rob tomorrow's retirement if you don't plan like income. So if your gut's been whispering that your advice you're getting is too generic, in the things that steal the greatest wealth from you. And as we've learned over the last week in many of the clips and comments that have come out, and I'm going to stay away from politics, but a lot of questions about college and the scam of college and the return on the investment. If you are feeling, look, if I'm going to spend this money, I want to be in the best possible opportunity to make that money have a return on an investment, then listen to your gut and do it different. Go visit our website, mergentadvisors.net. That's MERGENT advisors.net, about income and wealth and tax and estate, or specifically for college, mergentcollegeadvisors.com, which ties into all of that. And let's lock in a plan that protects your cash flow, your lifestyle, and your legacy.
Great. Thanks for coming on, Doug. That's the show for this week. Thank you again for joining us on Money Tree Investing Podcast. My name's Kirk Chisholm, Wealth Manager of Innovative Advisor Group. We don't just manage your wealth, we make your life better. You can find more about me at innovativewealth.com. And of course, you can find me every week here on this show. You can also check out our show at Money Tree Investing Podcast. On our website, you'll have access to the show notes, resources, and the archive shows. Please remember to subscribe on our YouTube channel for immediate access to the new shows when they're released. When you subscribe to the show, it allows us to get access to some of the top minds of investing in personal finance. While you're here, please leave a comment and question if you want us to address it on the show. Have a great week ahead, and remember, no one will care about your money like you do, so invest in your life.